Hey, come on in, settle down. I almost didn't make this video, not because nothing happened, but because so much happened, but none of it, at least most of it, didn't feel relevant to this channel, to writing, to creativity, to what I like talking about, or it's just things I don't know how to talk about on camera yet. But that's kind of the point of the series, isn't it? It's to show up anyway. It's even when the months are hard, even when things feel like they're not going in the right way, showing up. So yeah, let's talk about March. I wrote 5,749 words in March, and I'm just gonna let that sit there for a second because when I compare it to January, in January I wrote over 25,000 words. In February I wrote almost 16,000, and on paper, seeing this decline just looks like a total collapse. Yeah, it's a bit hard to deal with. And honestly, for a while it felt like that too. So this month I tried something new. I tried writing like V. Schwab, and if you know anything about me, if you've seen any of my videos, you'll know I absolutely adore her and I adore her writing. So I'm gonna leave that linked up here for you, but I went in thinking that her routine would slot right into my life, like it was made for it. And it didn't. It really, really didn't. I wanted it to work, and I want to try it again when my life is less chaotic, because I think the experiment deserves a much fairer run than what I did in March. My novel is nearly at the end of Act 1, which means that something's building up even when it doesn't feel like it. So I know that rationally, but emotionally I'm just like, where are the words? Where is the writing time? Where am I? Like, I just feel so scatterbrained and all over the place. And I kind of feel ashamed, like sitting down to record a video where I'm talking about writing and reading and creativity this month when I barely created. But with that in mind, I've also adjusted my deadline. I had a deadline to finish the novel by the end of March. I've moved that to the end of June. It's a decision I made clearly, not with defeat, but just with a bit of awareness of what's going to happen in the next few months. April's going to be almost a write-off. I'm going to be traveling for most of it, and I just feel like I was holding to a timeline that didn't take into account the way life changes. And I think maybe some of you are also doing that, holding on to an idea of how things need to unfold and putting so much pressure on yourself when, in fact, I feel like one of the reasons why March was so hard to create was because of how much pressure I was putting on myself. So let it breathe. I'll take a little bit of space. Not that I'm not going to write at all in April. I have a writing experiment to do after all, but I'm just hoping to pause a little bit and just get my life back on track. So I'm learning that adjusting a deadline isn't the same as giving up. It's just accurate. It's being honest about what's actually happening rather than punishing yourself for not living up to a plan that you made when your life was different. It looked different. It had a different every day. But reading in March was good. It held me together. I finished 7 books, and I have another one that I started yesterday, just before filming this. So let's go through them. I started and finished the Red Rising saga. So I had read Red Rising at the end of February, but then I read Golden Sun, Morning Star, Iron Gold, Dark Age, and Lightbringer by Pierce Brown in March. And you know, I loved the first trilogy. I devoured it. I was so immersed and so absorbed. And I loved the characters and the way they were progressing, their momentum and all of that. But then the second 3, they were good. They were really good, but I don't know, I just didn't connect with them as much. I didn't connect with the new characters as much. Yeah, I don't know. It could also have to do with just having all these starts and stops in my reading for those 3. There were new characters that were great additions. I just didn't read it at the same fever pitch as the first three. And I found myself toward the end of the last book just looking forward to being in a different world. And I mean, it's not a bad review. It was a great series, but at some point, I think I just got tired of being in this bleak world. Next up was Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott, which is going to be my craft lab video for April next week. I had read this a couple of years ago, and I was like, yeah, it's good, okay, it's fine. I reread this now, and I freaking loved it. I loved it. This was just, it was at the right time. It reminded me that even though I literally have this massive list of things I need to do before we travel, and it's completely unrealistic, and I don't know, I feel like I keep doing that to myself. But anyway, it reminded me that the best way you can tackle things is bird by bird. And it feels so well-timed, so well-timed. I chose it for that reason. And I just love the whole philosophy of it. Okay, enough. No, I'm not gonna say more because we'll do that next week. But after Bird by Bird, I read Paradise Lost by John Milton, which I had been looking forward to for years. It's been on my TBR for such a long time, and it was just a pick from the jar, and it's not an easy read, and the language is so beautiful and so complex and so multi-layered. It's just, I appreciate the skill. It was tough. It was tough, but I think it's worth reading. And next up is Red Queen. I don't know if this was even in focus, but it's Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. I haven't read any books by her before, and I haven't read this series before, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Now, I want to also talk about something that's just been sitting with me, and it's been on my mind. We have this idea, or at least I have this idea, of what a good creative month looks like, and that's kind of why I was talking about how March felt a bit like a failure, and I was even feeling embarrassed to record this video and talk about it. You know, a good creative month involves word count goals being met, books being read, content published, not taking it easy, rather having all this forward momentum and progress and feeling like you're growing as a creative and trying new things. And there are so many things that I want to try. Like, I want to learn how to draw on an iPad. I want to get back into making miniatures and stuff like I used to. And that's what a good creative month would be for me. That wasn't what this month was like, even in the slightest. And I need to just tweak my thinking about it a little bit, because just because that's not what the month looked like doesn't mean it wasn't a good month. I kept going. I still wrote nearly 6,000 words while managing, I don't know, so much. I read 7 books. I'm on my 8th. I kept this channel alive. I showed up imperfectly, inconsistently. I eased up on my posting schedule because I just couldn't cope with it for now. But I showed up, and I've been asking myself lately, what if this metric of what a good month is, and this idea of what a good month is wrong? What if a good creative month isn't about output, but rather about not abandoning your creativity, about keeping true to yourself and holding on to this thread of this project or whatever it is that you want to create, just even if you only get to hold it loosely. There's a version of me that looks at March and sees failure. It sees 25, 16, 5, 6, whatever. And that's a failure. But then there's another version of me, a one that I'm trying to grow into, that looks at March and sees somebody who didn't quit. Somebody who kept writing through the noise, through all the chaos, and who just tried to process grief and exhaustion and overwhelm and still got nearly 6,000 words done. And that's not nothing. That's not nothing. 6,000 words and getting closer to the end of Act 1 isn't nothing. And I don't know if I've convinced myself. I'm not sure you're able to convince yourself either when you're in a situation like this, but I'm trying to show myself more compassion when I don't meet a deadline that I set when my life looked different. I'm working on it, and hopefully you will be working on it too. Moving on to April. April's gonna be busy. It's gonna be a lot, but I feel like it's gonna have a lot more joy. I feel like I have a lot left to do before I can recalibrate and come back to my space and feel at home again. But I also have a trip coming up. We're going to Scotland. My partner and I are going to Scotland, and I'm hoping that just this warm little thing is just going to help me reset and help me get back to myself. I'm gonna get to see V. Schwab in her what's it called? In her The Ending Writes Itself book tour in Edinburgh, and yeah, I'm excited. I'm going to get to go to a lot of my favorite bookstores and my favorite hot chocolate place and just take a breath. And I feel so lucky that my partner and I get to do this. So I'm hoping that April is going to be quieter on the inside for me, even if it isn't quieter on the outside. In April, content-wise, we're going to be talking about Bird by Bird, and we're also going to be doing a challenge. I'm going to do a challenge where I'm going to write for 12 hours straight and see what happens. I'll see you next week. And until then, take care of yourselves, and I hope that you find a way to show yourselves a little bit of compassion if this month wasn't the kind of month that you were hoping it would be.